folks. It is I, Tempest Nairman Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue my discussion on the 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons 5e D&D. Alright, where we last left off, we were talking about some game mastering details, actually running your game and talking about your table. So let's start with some information that's going to help out with your table today. We're going to be talking about new characters, the dice a little bit more, and then diving into you as the DM, the Dungeon Master, determining some difficulties for checks your characters are going to be making. But let's start with the first one, new characters. Well, really, we want to talk about new players. Because the fact is, sometimes you get new players that want to play D&D, and you want to add them into your adventuring group, because maybe you're starting out an adventure with them. That's an easy one. We're starting everyone from scratch, whether they're new or old. But if I'm playing a D&D session and I have an opening for someone and that new player over there is like, I want to join your adventure. Well, we've been playing for a while. We're filling this slot. What do? Well, first off, that new person, they should have a character of an appropriate level to everyone else. This means the lowest level amongst all the other players, that's the level they're equivalent to. This new person to your group. Now, if that person is actually quite literally a new player to D&D, this might be hard for them because you're bringing them in at a higher level. This is where you want to bring them in to have them equivalent power to everyone else. But it's not always the best time. In that case, you might want to take all your other players and say, like, look, I want to make sure this guy learns correctly, this guy or girl, this person learns it. Why don't we have a couple of sessions with new lower level characters that maybe we can use at another point in time, first level characters, to get this person the ropes. So we play like a couple, like maybe 3-4 sessions of first level characters, new ones that the players hadn't played before. Everybody gets to have a fun time. The new person gets to learn the ropes. Then you can have them dive up and make their higher level character, dive into the adventure with everyone else, continue where you left off. Everything's wonderful. That's just one of the ways you can do things. Because the fact is, though, jumping into the middle of a quest, the middle of a adventure, can be difficult for any player. And it can be difficult for any character. You're going to want to try to integrate them properly. So there are a few suggestions we can talk about to integrate characters into the middle of a campaign, rather than if you didn't have it at the beginning. Something that makes it easier for those players playing those characters to, well, adventure with you. First off, you can make the new person a friend or relative of someone in the party. They were looking for the party to meet up with this person and decide to travel with them then. Bam! They already have a relation to someone in the group. You can have the person that they're related to kind of choose. You would have your players determine this a little bit between themselves. It would come up with it. It'd be easy for the character to integrate. All right. Second, a prisoner that the group, the adventurers, freed from whoever they were opposing. Let's say they were breaking into a tomb, freed someone from some kind of cult leader that was going to use them to create undead. This new person they just freed wants to join their team. Help them adventure. Help them defeat the person that they were. And after they're done defeating this cultist and his cult team, well, maybe he travels with them then. That integrates them. And the other possible way is maybe that other character is a sole survivor of another adventuring group. And when he hears about these adventuring, decides to get back into the action and asks to join them. That's a good reason too. You can see that there possibly could be other reasons, but these three are probably the easiest ways that you can integrate a new character into your team very efficiently. Now let's talk about the rolls of the dice a little bit more, because the dice are an impartial arbiter that you're going to have to deal with at some point in time. It's impartial, that's the bigger thing about it, and it's needed in the game. You can't eliminate it completely. But the amount of rolls that you have will reflect you as a DM and your style. Not to say that having a lot of dice rolls or very little dice rolls is a bad thing. It's a different style, and choosing the proper style, depending on what you enjoy, you're going to have to make some concessions to make it a little bit more enjoyable for your player and to make it work. So, the motivation that exists is with you, and the level that you rely on the dice is also up to you. So you might want your characters to roll dice for pretty much everything. Now, not your mundane tasks, which are going to be automatically competed. No, I'm talking about any kind of specific thing they want to do that has a chance of failure. You're going to make them roll for. Now, this style is fine. It just means that you're leaving a lot of things up to chance. You should just make sure, first off, that you don't have one die roll determine everything for your players. Just because they might fail this one or succeed at this one shouldn't mean end of the world, their character death, or ultimate success. It shouldn't. It should influence the outcome in some way, but it's going to be up to you to improvise how things are going to be affected by this. Because maybe someone failed to grab a rope that was just plummeting. You shouldn't make a big punishment out of it. You should come up with a way that things still go, or at least could go the way of the adventurers, our heroes, but maybe it's a little more difficult now. Maybe they have a little bit more challenge. Make it interesting. Be ready for that, especially if you are going to rely on the dice rolls, because the dice rolls are impartial. You don't know if it's going to punish your players or help them out. And going too far in either way can damage your game. It can make it damage from the enjoyment of it, in a way. Now, giving this much dice roll does give players a sense that anything is possible. That's an important part of it, because any check, no matter how insane or difficult it seems, I could roll a die, maybe I can reach that difficulty, maybe I can succeed at it, maybe I can do some kind of crazy thing that seems very difficult. The die roll is what's going to determine my outcome. The biggest disadvantage of this type of play is it can diminish your role-playing side. It makes it that your characters begin to less rely on their own decisions and their own determinations, that they feel that the dice are the thing pushing them, not what they decide for their characters and not what they kind of plan out for them. It feels like it's detracting in that way, which it can occur. Now, the other way to do this is to virtually ignore the dice. This is the opposite end of the spectrum. I can choose to very oftentimes not have any die rolls. Only if it's some kind of critical situation where a die roll might be very useful, where success or failure means something, or in combat, I might just completely ignore dice rolls. What I'm going to do then is have my players describe what they want to do, and depending on how well they describe it and what they describe, I will award them success or failure. If they're looking for a secret passage and they describe the way that they're doing it and describe a way that I feel they will notice where that secret passage is, I reward them with finding it. There you go. Or if they're saying they're looking somewhere completely different than where the secret passage is, then yeah, I'll be like, nope, you don't find anything. This technique rewards creativity. It encourages your players to think of creative ways of doing things and to look beyond the abilities that they have on their character sheet and don't let those bog them down. The big disadvantage here is that every DM is going to be biased in some way. You might start favoring certain types of decisions, certain types of techniques in order to overcome obstacles that others could theoretically be fine, but you're favoring the ones that you are learning to favor. You like that approach. You like that direction. In fact, you might become so stuck on some kind of direction or approach that when your players can't think of it, it bogs down the game because you're not letting them do something to overcome the problem that's creative because you're thinking this is the creativity they should have, not these ideas, that these ideas won't solve it. While you really need to have an open balance in this case, it's just a problem that can occur. Now, there is a middle ground between this, somewhere in between, where you're using not all dice rolls or no dice rolls. You're using a moderate amount of dice rolls and some creativity. You're trying to strike a balance between your characters relying on their abilities when need be, but also being creative enough to find other ways of handling things. It strikes a balance between your characters balancing out their abilities they would have on their sheets and being able to think creatively, to look at the world and determine how things they could possibly occur, and then just use creativity in descriptions. It comes down to, when we're talking about this game, you have to remember that the dice are a tool like anything else that you have. They're not running the game. They're a tool that you're using to determine a probability of something. That if something has a success chance and a success failure, and you don't know how it's going to go with your characters saying what they're doing. My player says, I'm going to do this. I describe this. I don't know if this will succeed or fail. Give them an opportunity. Give them a chance. If they describe something that you're like, oh yeah, that's going to succeed, give it to them. Give them great bonuses for great ideas. But it's the balance between these two which is going to be critical. You can easily decide this thing is automatically successful. Or, if they have a good description, give them advantage to a roll. You could also, of course, give disadvantage if they're in a negative situation that they're thinking this is a great idea when it's really not a great idea. Trying to, do some kind of crazy acrobatics when you didn't even check the rope to see if it would support your weight. Maybe some disadvantage that if you fail, the rope might break. Something like that can occur. You can even automatically failure if something just won't happen. If the rope is about to drop and break apart at the moment's notice, and they try to grab it, then yeah, it fails automatically. So circumstances could be made for any of these, or just normal rolls. It gives you opportunity to enhance and affect the gameplay using the dice without relying on the dice. Now, oftentimes the player will want to do something, and it's going to be chance whether they succeed or fail at this. This is when you might call for an ability check for your characters to use one of their 6 ability scores to see if they succeed at something. Now, you shouldn't call for an ability check when it's something that's going to be automatically successful. You don't need dexterity to walk across a room successfully, or charisma to order an ale. No, you don't have to make these checks. You just do them. What you really have to look at is 2 things. First off, is the task so easy and free of conflicts or stress that there should be no chance of failure they can do it? Or you should also look at, is the task so impossible that no amount of attempts or tries could be possible? Like seeing a mountain 3 miles away and saying, I can shoot an arrow and hit it from here, when you have no skill at an arrow. If either of these questions are answered yes, then don't do anything. You just, that's automatically you don't have a check. If both of them are no, so it's not automatically successful or automatic failure, then yeah, you're looking at a check then. An ability check is the way to do it. So this means these 2 questions, basically answering them, get rid of a lot of options that your players might have to try to do things that you could be like, no, that fails, or no, that succeeds. No need for checks. Now, whether it's just an ability check or some other kind of check, that's what we're going to be talking about today, and the difficulties of using these checks. Whether or not this is an ability check or some other type of check, and the actual difficulties, that's what we're going to be moving on to. But that's it for today. So, first I talked about having new players in your group. Whether or not they're actual new players to D&D, or just players that are becoming new to your group, I gave you some suggestions for how to integrate them, how to help them join. I then talked about the dice rolls and how to rely on them. That you do have to have dice rolls, and how much reliance? Well, it is technically up to you, whether you're going to use dice rolls for everything, rarely use it at all, or find that sweet spot in the middle. All 3 are actually fine aspects for role-playing. You just have to make sure you watch each of them and make decisions, make judgments appropriately to make each of them balance with each other. Because you can balance all 3 of these and have fine games otherwise. Then I talked about making ability checks and when it's really appropriate. And that's where we're going to move into next time, is diving into the types of ability checks, when you're going to be using these ability checks and various other types of checks, which are attacks, skills, and of course, the difficulties you might be facing. The kind of things you'll be using when you're opposing others, or just trying to do something crazy in the real world. But I hope you're having a great day. If you've had an interesting way of integrating a new player, whether again, completely new player or just new to your game, into one of your games in the middle of a campaign, let me know. I gave you those 3 easy ways to do it. Maybe you came up with something really creative for your games. Love to hear your stories. Regardless though, until the next time, I bid you farewell.